Hi everybody, this is Warren Herman. Today what we're going to speak about is this idea of the comfort cross. Sometimes, you may find among little Christian or Catholic products a cross that is nice and smooth, that is held in the hand or the pocket, that is designed to be comforting. It's a kind of smooth, and you kind of hold it to calm yourself. And what's fascinating about this is that this unifies the great paradoxes of the Christian life, which essentially teach us that our life needs to be a synthesis of suffering and of comfort. It's fascinating that our Savior himself walked this exact path. There is a kind of cross that is called the nuptial cross, which depicts Jesus Christ on the cross with Mary next to him. And it's as if he is being comforted by Mary as he is on the cross. This is a very powerful image because it shows that our life must be the unification of two principles. The first principle is one that Carl Jung spoke about as the animus, or the masculine principle. We could just call it broadly that, it doesn't have to be necessarily linked to any tradition. Or then there's this principle of comfort, the feminine principle. And we could see these clearly depicted in the nuptial cross, as the cross is the kind of that father, the kind of suffering of responsibility and the world of the Father, whereas Mary is the nurturing, the world of the Mother, and they are unified as in this idea of the nuptial cross. And it is deeply important that we realize that this is what our life is supposed to be like. And there are so many things that come into focus when we see it in light of this nuptial cross. We start to realize a number of things. And I'm going to begin by just making a various number of points that are related to this idea of balancing the animus and the anima, the masculine and the feminine, the full embrace of both of these polarities in our Christian life. First of all, it's important to realize that we must not demonize the idea of comfort. Many times we say, am I merely doing this thing as a defense? Well, you are a human being and you need to be defended and protected. You do need comfort. You do need love. We should never believe that the idea to protect ourselves, to set boundaries, to be safe is something to be denied just because it is a seemingly immature thing. Granted, in the book Spiritual Bypassing, the therapist Robert Augustus Masters discusses how many times when someone is involved in spiritual work, especially in a non-Christian context, they almost end up regressing to the kind of undifferentiated consciousness they had in the womb through their meditative practices. And in many ways, this is what happens in these traditions. So it is, so there is that element of, there is that element there. And so we can see, when, in that tradition, there is a teaching of Jesus which says, when you pray, go into your inner room, shut the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. If we don't have a sense that our Father is in secret, we end up just going into the inner room of our undifferentiated identity and meditation, and then we don't pray. We simply shut the door on the world, and it becomes avoidance. It becomes that regression. Because if we don't go further and see the Father inside we don't realize that the Father needs to be found in the depths of the feminine soul, so to speak. The soul being feminine in relation to God. We don't actually go within in a proper way. We end up merely going into the anima, into that feminine polarity of comfort in ourselves, and we do in fact do what Robert Augustus Masters discussed, which is a regression to that undifferentiated state before we were, born, a deconstruction of the identity. And this is the path of Buddhism and Hinduism and the different types of meditations. And so that's not the path of the Christian meditation. There's other videos about this, and we could a proper understanding can be found in the book The Cloud of Unknowing. That kind of explains what further about how to do this, but here we're just talking about it conceptually. So needless to say, but there needs to be, we can't demonize this seeking for like a kind of withdrawal from the world. We can't demonize a seeking of comfort. It is in a sense regressive, but we need it. We need part of that polarity. There was once a video I saw where there was this guy who was talking about how we should live our lives, and he was kind of making a humorous presentation saying, doobie, 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 do. You have to do, you have to be. You have to do, you have to be. We need both of those polarities, the animus of doing and the anima of being, the masculine doing, the feminine being. We need them both. So there needs to be both of these elements in our lives, and they both need to be fully integrated. And of course, in the Christian tradition, it's not merely doing and being as kind of contradictions of yin and yang. It is this doing and being which are done with, where they are doing and being with God. And so this is the thing, that the hinge that holds the journey of doing and being together is that it is done with God. One of the beautiful, that we've been speaking theoretically, but practically we see this type of practice. Let's give an example of this, is from the life of St. Maximilian Kolbe. So St. Kolbe, when he was about to be taken by the Gestapo, he says, yes, mother. He receives the fact that the Nazis are about to take him from the hands of the Virgin Mary. He is able to essentially see what he is receiving in life as coming from the hands of the Virgin. And so the things that are terrible, that are hurtful, are received from her nurturing hand. He's doing a kind of spiritual jujitsu on experience, on the fallen world, by receiving it as the gift of his mother. So he's combining those two polarities of animus and anima, nurturance and suffering, in a very beautiful and perfect way, so that he can endure so that he can be formed into the likeness of Christ. We also see this in the habit of the Franciscan habit. It is both clothing and cross. We see the Tau cross that the Franciscans wear. It is their clothing and it is their instrument of torture. It is both what comforts and what destroys. We see this also, especially with the friars that have a blue Franciscan habit or a bluish gray one, that gives it that Marian dimension. It's the cross given by our mother to clothe us, to nurture us, to comfort us, both our clothing and our cross. These polarities, this is the Christian life, the comfort cross. This is those polarities that really show us the truth. So how do we practice this? We obviously need to see everything as coming from the hand, the initiating hand of our Father, the nurturing hand of our Mother. These are the ways of looking at this. We see also a need to balance our life. In the Plum Village tradition of Buddhism, there's a lot of teaching about how we must relax as we work. We can't have there be work and then relaxation. We cannot have animus without anima. We must not fall prey to this idea that we do one without the other. We must have relaxation and work with God. That is how we must focus and receive receive things as relaxation and refreshment, even as we are active. And that is how we balance this. This is very similar to what in the Taoist tradition they call Wu Wei, doing, not doing. Because they seek, this is like in Tai Chi, they seek to kind of flow. And that is the thing. We need to kind of get into this rhythm of doing and being with God. So it's very important. We don't want to demonize the passive, nor do we want to demonize the active. We need both polarities. Depending on, we obviously can have various lifestyles that integrate one more so than the other, that make one primary and the other one secondary. Our choice of religious life or marriage can very much dictate this, but there needs to always be balance. We can never do any vocation effectively if we do not have the balance of these polarities. These polarities also show us ways to embrace suffering. They show us that this world is our mother's world and our father's world. St. Alphonsus teaches us that everything that happens is willed by Mary as well as by God. And in our lives, we can see that we almost need to season our experiences if we have two different, if we have two different condiments on a table, whether it's, you want to say mustard and ketchup or, salt or pepper, we have the animus and the anima. And we must season whatever path we take, whatever meal we choose to eat of our lives, we must season them in a balanced way so that we don't fall prey to one thing or the other. So whenever there is something that tests us, whenever something comes along, it shows us where we are not in balance and shows us where we can still kind of put some weight. It's almost like a scale. Like if something taps the scale, it's like you could kind of say, okay, well, where do I need to put some more weight on this side? And where do I have to put some weight on that side? And it's an opportunity to walk the path of balance between animus and anima, to work that path of the comfort cross. And that is the path that we are called to. That path of unity in ourselves, that nuptial cross. And I think that's so beautiful. And this helps, and there's other ways, there's other elements to this. Because, of course, it shows that we want to not be so dramatic in our lives, to not be making such a drama of things, to embrace that anima side, yet to know we have to figure it out, and try to do our best to figure it out. That's important as well. But we have to get out of that pressure. There's so much pressure we put on ourselves to find answers, or so much pressure we put on ourselves to get things right in our lives. But that is, of course, of that animus side, that egoic side. And so we still need to figure things out. So we have to find a middle ground where, just like in the 12 steps, they say detach with love. Or, in the Hindu tradition, there's surrendered action, doing things as an offering to the divine without attachment to results. We need to have, or as I said, Wu Wei in the Taoist tradition. And of course, we have to reinterpret these contexts, obviously, in a Catholic and Christian context. But I'm bringing up these suggestions that kind of show the variety of ways that this principle finds itself across traditions as a universal human phenomenon. So we can't really, and so we had to find this as the meaning of our lives. This polarity needs to, as Viktor Frankl once said, he was in the concentration camps, and he said he always had unconditional faith in unconditional meaning. And so we have to see this as the meaning of the different sufferings of our lives, is to find this balance. Rather than seeing it as something that is terrible, that is something to punish us, we have to, again, receive things from the hand of God as means to balance us, to make us like Christ on that nuptial cross, to balance those polarities perfectly like Him in ourselves. And so that is the way that we can look at this life. So this, I think, is a very important and healthy way of looking at life. So we shouldn't say, hey, I demonize being a man, being a worker, being in the world and striving. We don't demonize that, but we don't idolize that, because that doesn't get us anything if we're just going crazy for money and everything. But we also realize that there's a good side of activity. And we don't demonize, say, oh yeah, you're regressive, you're a monk, you're passive, you're going out of the world, you just don't have what it takes because you can't get a girlfriend. It's like you don't go that route either. You say, okay, well, both of these things, complete detachment and complete engagement, are both completely necessary. Whether you emphasize one in the religious life or the other in married life, the engagement or the detachment, it's kind of like both of those polarities are both necessary. And so it shows us also that life is not about a horrible choice to be outside of our comfort zone and be a man, or or a regressive choice to to be comfortable and be a mama's boy. It's really this choice of saying, how do I expand my comfort zone? And Christ leads that way, being crucified on the cross with his mother there to support him. He leads that way to the integration of the polarities. And so I think that's very important and very healthy. So it's not don't go out of your comfort zone. It's not always throw yourself out of your comfort zone. It's expand your comfort zone by living the way of the comfort cross. And so I think that's very important, and these things are very significant, because we have to fully avoid everything and fully engage with everything, whether we are primarily avoiding as a celibate or primarily engagement as a married person. We must fully avoid everything in God and must fully engage with everything in God. And this is the path to individuation. It's like, if we look at how do we become ourselves, you could almost see there's two lines, like a little axes to individuate. It's like if you have one arrow pointing one way toward avoidance on like a spectrum, and the other one points the other way on a line toward engagement. They just kind of make a flat line, and they just kind of have this way of just kind of not really having a real important impact on our lives. The thing is that we have to really realize that there is this true necessity of a balance of these two things. Like, we have to see, how do we integrate them? And we integrate them by putting God into them. Because to become a self, you put God in the interior, and that kind of bends. If you made this a little diagram of I'm going to make a little illustration here with my hand. I'm going to say, so here would be, if it was a line, this would be anima toward the passive, animus toward the active. But if you put God in, if you make refuge in God, it kind of brings the in going up. And if you go out in God as service to God, in goes out. So it makes this nice you. So in order to become you need God. In order to become you, your activity must go upward. Not just, I'm going into myself. Then you just flatline. Your identity flatlines. But if you have God, your identity becomes a you. I go in and I go up. I go out and I go up. And these two polarities are what individuate us into a true you, into a self. And so I hope that this video, which gives a whole lot of different ways of thinking about this territory, is going to be helpful to you in your journey of life.